Thanks, man. It's great to be here. Thank you very much. I'll start with how I got here. Well, actually, I didn't. I was always shooting to actually get up to the stars, and this just happens to be the next best thing. Growing up, I was inspired by astronauts, and astronauts really are the heroes that inspire childhood dreams with their right stuff of brains and brawn. And as anyone who's trying to follow a model like an astronaut, I tried to put together my own astronaut playbook to try to get myself into the program. But along the way, life took a different turn, and as many astronauts who have had that privilege of looking at the Earth from above and wondered, why is there war, why is there poverty, I decided to try to see if there was a way to better connect with the world and its people. I landed up in a place in rural India with a very different sort of hero. This is where the men and women that represent 60% of India's population do the hard work that produces the second largest farm output in the world. Imagine for a moment that you are an agricultural extension agent, somebody who's tasked with training farmers on new practices and technologies that can boost the productivities of these farmers. It's a huge challenge. Farms are remote and terrains are difficult to navigate. Communities are large and diverse. Even in countries like India, with over 100,000 extension officers of the government and also of the private sector, as well as in Ethiopia, with over 54,000 extension agents, it's just a daunting challenge. There's also the issue of motivation, both for farmers to trust an extension agent coming in from the outside, as well as for extension agents who are toiling in the sun, and in India, finding that less than 2% of farmers actually report engaging with an extension agent. At the same time, 12% of farmers in India report exchanging information with one another across their informal social networks about what crops they grew and how they grew them. Farmers are justifiably biased to rewards that can be had in the present and are hesitant to make changes in their practices based on generic campaigns alone. But just as early television set a generation to study science and engineering, including myself, though I was in a subsequent generation, these same tools of technology can be used to create incentives, some of which may not be based on money alone, to create ladders of achievement where farmers can literally compete to be seen as the best farmer. Now, this has been done before. This is American Idol, as well as its numerous spin-offs. It's really the opportunity that these shows and their spin-offs that people compete, not just for record contracts and the ability to receive some prize money, but really the opportunity to be on these big stages that gives these shows their broad appeals. So at Digital Green, what we do is that we partner with government, NGO, even private sector organizations that are working with rural communities. And we train these rural communities on how to produce short 8 to 10-minute videos that are by farmers, for farmers, and of farmers, using off-the-shelf camcorders, microphones, and tripods, and share agricultural practices and related livelihood practices that can boost their productivities. Over the last 5 years, about 2,800 of these videos have been produced in 20 different languages. The topics span a variety of topics and genres, from testimonials to interviews to demonstrations of a variety of practices. What we're essentially trying to do is to flip the broadcast television paradigm, where the content is actually being produced by the communities and for the communities. The first questions that people often ask when they see these videos is not about the economics of the practices that they watch, but rather, what's the name of the person that appears in these videos and which village is he or she from, to authenticate, really, its source. We even see some farmers competing in farmer idol types of programs, where they want to be seen as role models within their respective communities by appearing within these programs. Because of the limitations of electricity and internet connectivity amongst these rural communities, these videos are screened using offline devices. We use, as shown in this picture, a battery-operated pico projector, which is facilitated by somebody from the community, whose role is essentially to interactively present these videos to small groups of farmers. We're primarily working with women's self-help groups who are already engaged in various microcredit and savings programs. And essentially, every 2 weeks, these groups in any given village are watching one new program that's seasonally and location-specific in appropriateness for these folks to actually watch and participate in. And as these videos are being screened by that facilitator who's pausing, rewinding, asking questions, getting feedback, this facilitator is also recording a variety of types of data about who is watching what video, what questions do they ask, what do they like, what do they not like, what else do they want to see, and after the videos have been shown, what practices do folks adopt afterwards onto their farms and actually utilize for their own sort of productivity. This data that is captured by these facilitators is inputted into an analytics sort of dashboard, essentially building a Nielsen types of rating system for the over 150,000 farmers that we're working with today to essentially inform and target the production and distribution of content based on the needs and interests of the communities that we are working with. We found that this approach essentially improves the efficiency of these existing extension systems that we're working with by a factor of 10 times per dollar spent. This collection of 2,800 videos is all online on YouTube, as well as on our website, where we've tried to take the YouTube sort of platform and build a layer on top of it so that you don't just have a single search box where you're trying to browse through 2,800 videos plus the billions of hours of content that are uploaded each day on YouTube, but to be able to search in a location and sector-specific way information pertaining to agriculture. So you can find a video pertaining to a tomato practice, for example, in some part of Bihar that might be appropriate for a farmer to try to take up for himself or herself. And we found that about 1 million people have actually watched these videos even online on this website in just the last year as sort of connectivity is expanding across the country. In addition to the videos, there's also a variety of data and feedback that we're also showing on the website, which is useful to inform the production and distribution of the next set of videos based on the frequently asked questions that are appearing as these videos are being screened amongst these self-help groups of farmers that are watching these programs. We can also map this data onto a Google map to essentially see how issues, whether they are of pests or disease, are spreading across the country and be more proactive, or preemptive rather, in terms of addressing them by distributing content that might be able to help resolve some of these issues before they even arise, as one of these issues might be spreading across a particular span of region. We're also looking at seeing how this data can actually be used not just for the purposes of targeting the production and distribution of content, but also can be used to create these incentives through non-monetary means of creating leaderboards amongst the community groups, as well as the facilitators who are working with these community groups in the form of essentially these leaderboards of the farmers as well as the facilitators, which are based on the percentage of videos that a farmer or a facilitator has promoted to the number that they've actually adopted. And it's essentially meant to kind of create a reflective mode for folks to actually see themselves with respect to their peers as progressing as farmers in their respective communities. And the data of each individual farmer is also reflected on a tool that we've developed called Farmer Book, where you can see these timeline-based activity feeds of an individual farmer over the course of time about the videos that this person has watched and the practices that she may have liked, the questions that she may have expressed, and the practices that she may have adopted, and how that compares with fellow members within her peer group of self-help group members. You can even follow farmers on Facebook itself and receive updates as they adopt new practices. And in fact, even in these rural areas, the first places that folks tend to go to is usually Facebook or YouTube. And so this provides a means for them to even learn and share as they're gaining greater connectivity. We've also developed a game on Facebook, which is really targeted not so much for the rural communities, but more for the urban audiences and youth within urban audiences who are increasingly disconnected with these rural producers of food. Just as we're seeing in the West, it's still sort of early days here in places like India, but we still see the same trend that there is this growing disconnect. And so what we're trying to see how we can do through this game called Wonder Village is to try to connect through a virtual way these online sort of social networks of friends with these offline social networks of farmers that we're working as you build a virtual village economy together. Essentially, the so-called digital divide between the developed and the developing sort of contexts of these rural areas in which we work what we found is that technology is not going to be able to cross this chasm in and of itself. Technology is really just a magnifier of human intent and capability. Things like political institutions, human capital, financing are necessary foundations before technology can really provide the gains in efficiency and the ability to broaden the participation of the communities into these types of interactions. And that's really where we found partnering with NGOs, government departments, private sector organizations is really critical to really seeing sort of this success of bringing together technology with social organization. That's when video, for instance, can spark the curiosity of farmers to take up new practices and improve their lives and those around them. And so that in one future point of time, there might be an opportunity for them to even celebrate with their own ticker tape parades like these Apollo 11 astronauts coming back from the moon in New York City. And we look forward to that day and really trying to see how our approach can realize that vision that farming in India doesn't need to be sort of seen as a vocation of last resort. It can really be something that people can aspire to and choose to do and realize some prosperity for themselves and for their families. Thank you very much.